Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Steel Roses Podcast. Steel Roses Podcast was created for women by women. You're hearing Jenny's voice today. Full disclosure, Melissa, my co-host, was meant to be recording this morning with me. Right as we were getting ourselves together to record, she was already up and working. Her daughter woke up, and we were texting back and forth about the time change this week and how it messed with our kids' schedule. So it's about 6:23 in the morning. She had been up since 5 already, working on her regular job work. And she texted me and was like, I'm up, I'm ready, let's hit this. Now, I want to give you guys full disclosure and why I'm moving forward with the recording and bring you into the topic, basically. She had gotten up at 5 a.m., Melissa, and texted me at 5 and I was like, I'm awake, I'm already working, kind of thing. Let me know when you want to record. Now, we've been having some trouble. And you probably noticed this in the episodes that have been released where it's a lot of my voice coming through. The reason why we're having trouble is because our schedules are not quite matching up. And our schedules don't match up because my kids are older now and I have more flexibility in terms of like being able to have them occupied on their own to be able to just do their own thing and not worry about them, needing me as much. They still need me, but it's definitely in a less intense way. So I'm able to just pivot a little bit easier. Now, it's not to say there was no frustrations, but I'll get to that in a minute. What led me to still want to record today is because I want to highlight this. When my kids were little too, there was basically zero time for me to do anything for myself. Now, granted, I know my situation was a little bit more intense, but because I had 3 at once that were basically the same age, my son was 1 year old when his twin sisters were born. And so I was consistently bombarded with like just overwhelming amount of childcare. And of course, if you have kids, when one gets sick, ultimately there's like a domino effect and everyone's sick for a month and you're kind of just going through the motion. What I used to do to survive this insanity when kids are little is a lot similar to what my cousin is doing at this point, because she works full time. She's a full-time mother and homemaker. She is home with her daughter all day. Because she's not quite in daycare yet. And she's juggling it at the same time. Now there's instances where we'll chat during the day and she's trying to catch up with me and on the podcast, but then she's trying to do her work and answer emails and grade papers. And she's a teacher. She's a professor. She has her doctorate. She doesn't brag about it, but I'll brag about it for her because it's amazing. She got her doctorate while her daughter was an infant. Let's all bow down because I want to commend any woman trying to do that kind of thing when you have a baby. It's like wild. She's in this point where at that life stage of your kids, when they're little like that, you almost just hunker down and keep your head down and keep moving forward. Don't stop to dwell. Don't stop to freak out, or you can freak out, but you don't have a lot of time to freak out. So you got about 5 minutes to freak out and then get right back to it. And that's basically what would sum up the first, I want to say 4 years of my kids' lives. Before we moved into our home, when we were in our apartment in North Jersey, the first 4 years of my kids' lives, I basically was in survival mode the whole time. I've talked about this before on other episodes, and it was incredibly intense. I'm going to be perfectly honest. I actually don't remember quite a lot of it because it was like a blur. And I was working full time, but I did have my kids all in daycare, which was wildly expensive. I think I was paying at one point over like $2,500 a month for daycare. And we were like drowning because of it. Cause it's wild how much that costs. And I remember the entire time I was going through it, just really thinking about how the United States, the way our society is structured, is not setting women up for success as mothers. And there should be more support. There should be support that's built into maybe healthcare, like we pay all this money for healthcare costs, and yet we then still also have to pay for childcare and all this other stuff. And, maybe there is something there. Now, I fully 110% believe and know that the reason why we are in this situation is because the original creators of our society never believed that women would leave the home, and they didn't think that they should. There's actually historical reason why this is the case. So this thought had been basically permeating our society for forever. And the reason why these thoughts came into fruition is because it goes back to biological writings. I actually was just doing light research. I've been doing research on feminism. So you'll hear that tone coming through, but I was doing research on, it's called The History of Human Female Inferiority Ideas and in Evolution and Biology. So there was a science-based theory that women were less than men because we didn't encounter as many dangers as men. And I'm talking, we're dating all the way back. This is talking about Darwinian worldview, believing that males were exposed to far greater selective pressures than females in war and competition for mates, food, clothing, food gathering, whatever, hunting. Because men are exposed to more dangerous situations, it was believed that natural selection was only keeping the strongest and smartest males alive, which translation is men are stronger and smarter than women because natural selection has occurred there. But because women are protected and experience less dangers, there's less natural selection. And so I'm going to say it, but it's like acid coming off my tongue. And so women are less smart than men because of this. We're less smart and less strong because of this. Now, I read that and I was like, wow, this is that's a lot to swallow. But that's what the thought process is. And that set the tone, at least in the United States. I'm sure it's happening elsewhere too, but in the United States, it set the tone for, oh, well, this must be true. That, women just can't handle it. When I was doing research on the history of feminism, you can actually find undertones of that dating all the way back into the 1800s, where women were not allowed to obviously work because it was believed that women had such a strong hold on the family unit, and women were basically the backbone of the family unit, and allowing women to leave the home would spark the downfall of families and, the normal family, or what was believed to be the normal family unit. Now, I've actually heard this before. I'm reading it in history, but I've heard this as well because that notion was pulled through in a way into Catholicism. I grew up Catholic, and I brought up Catholic. It's my baseline. And as I was growing up, what I was taught was, from my mother, was women working and leaving the home was the destruction of the family unit. And that's why so much divorce was prevailing. And my mom was telling me this because I think she wanted to teach me her values. And she was a stay-at-home mom. She wanted to teach me her values. Which I remember her telling me this, and in my head just thinking to myself, well, why can't they just adapt? Why can't I work and your partner just adapts? What's the problem here? Well, it's because men don't actually do that. They don't actually adapt very well, which if you're married, you already know that. But it's wild because when you think about, equality at work, pay equality, I can argue pay equality for forever. It's just, I could go to town on that. But there's also that equality at home. Now, even people that Melissa knows or that I know that started out as parents and it was very 50-50 and, it was all hands in, everybody's involved. That slowly shifted onto the mother as the children got older. And, if the kid is sick, you're the one who stays home. And I'm not complaining, but I am. And again, if you're a mother, you know exactly what I mean when I say I'm not complaining, but I am complaining, because I know that I am essentially like the healer for my kids. I am their safe spot, and I'm supposed to be their safe spot. Like, that's how I feel, but that's my choice to, lean into that a little bit more. But I'm their safe haven. I'm the one they'll come to and crumble. If they've had a bad day, I'm the one that they will let their temper out on. And then I'm like, okay, talk to me though. Like, tell me what's going on. And I think in majority of households, that is really what it is. That the children will seek out their mother. Like my kids, there have been situations where my husband will be literally sitting maybe 10 feet away from me, just not really doing anything. And I'm like, either on my computer, I have my headphones in, I'm doing something on the side, I'm taking notes, or I'll be washing dishes, cooking dinner, what I'm typically always in motion. I'm trying not to be, but I typically always am. My husband will just be there in the room. My kids will walk right past him while he's doing nothing and come over to me and be like, Mommy, could you help me with this? Or Mommy, could you do this? And I'm like, can you ask your father? He's right there. And it's almost like a retraining for them, because there's even been instances where he can't do it. And I'm like, he can do it. He knows how to do it. So there's almost retraining that has to happen, as your kids get older, to tell them you can go to your father, or you can go to, my so-and-so, just to even it out a little bit, because the natural inclination is I'm going to go to my mother, at least here at my house. In full transparency, when my husband and I were dating, I was on board for the old school gender roles at home. I actually had said this in work the one day. I can't remember exactly how it came up, but I had shared with one of my coworkers. I was full disclosure, I was I'm basically a 1950s housewife at home. And she started laughing, and she was like, I had a feeling. She was like, whatever works for you, no judgment. And I want to highlight that, because I think people get really testy and irritated with each other. Women in general will get very judgy with oh, well, if you're a feminist, you should be acting in this way, and you should be forcing your husband into doing laundry and this and that, whatever. And it's just not how. It's not how I was raised. I do consider myself a feminist, but at the same time, I choose to do the, old school gender roles. That's what I choose. That's what I wanted. And while it drives me insane, and I have started outsourcing some of that work, it is what I chose. And it's something that we had actually heavily discussed before we even got this far down the path, was who's doing what. It actually was a discussion, thanks to my husband, because his communication skills are phenomenal. But I digressed a little bit. But yeah, it does typically, most of it falls to the mother. And again, there's reason behind it. There's a reason it's so deeply ingrained in our society, and will take a lot of time to break those kind of ideas. Now, I did also, I started looking a little bit more into rapid cultural changes and what that means. Because again, when I was growing up, my mother, my aunts, all heavily believed that, oh gosh, I'm going to say it. Everyone heavily believed that, one of my aunts flat out told me that women, should not be educated. And I know, everyone simmer down. And she told me that women should not receive an education, because then it pulls them from the family, and that it enhances the divorce rate. And it basically was putting all the onus on the woman's shoulders for the downfall of marriage, and the downfall of families. I feel like that's a very closed off way to think about this kind of thing, because a woman being educated just means that she's being educated. She's more aware. She can protect herself, in my opinion.
Let's take a quick break.
Are you interested in podcasting but not sure where to start? My name is Jenny Benitez, and I'm here to help guide you through your podcast launch and maintenance. Check out the link in the episode description for Podcasting Unboxed, your comprehensive startup guide. I am very excited to work with you.
When you educate yourself, you're enhancing your knowledge And it's a protection for you because no one can steal that from you. My husband used to tell me that all the time. Your knowledge is one thing that no one can ever take from you. And your experience level and what you know and what you've gone through, no one can ever take that from you. That is yours alone. That's your unique makeup that is going to really bring you up and make you stand out, is because you have this knowledge that no one can ever take from you. Everything else can be stolen, but your mind can't be stolen from you. And I remember when my aunt she was so adamant about it, like that, women should not be educated. And I was so appalled that I was at a loss for words. I think I was like 19 when she said this, which is I was like, I'm a college student. What are you talking about? Like, how could you say women shouldn't be educated? Like, what is wrong with you? It's because, again, society originally had this notion that women were less than men. So she already had that in her head. But then also it was pulled through into Catholicism, that it's like, not into Catholicism, but that messaging was pulled through and manipulated into making it so that women working outside the home was evil. I'm going to go a little conspiracy off to the side here, because in my mind, like I've read so much about this and about women being held down. And I've done a lot of research also too about, minorities being held down and, and looking at that kind of thing. And, in my research, every time I've gone in for readings and stuff like that, for either minorities or for women being held back, my thought is that perhaps it's the fear that we will surpass. The reason I've had this thought is because professionally, I have experienced being held back many times where I will be, in one particular instance, I was professionally the point person on the largest account, bringing in the most revenue. And I held all of the relationships for this massive amount of money that was coming into the organization I was working with at the time. I held all the cards, and these clients respected me and collaborated with me. And I remember being so just honored and, just felt so wonderful about what I had accomplished at that point, and that people respected me that much. And I thought that would translate, internally at my organization. But what ended up happening was that the leadership folks who were men started having these big idea meetings with these key people that I held relationships with, and they left me out. And I remember I was speaking to one of these clients. They said something like, "Oh, we're meeting with so-and-so. Yeah, the big meeting." And I was like, "Pardon? What are you referring to?" And then I had to kind of play it off like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to talk to so-and-so about it," because I didn't want to give the impression that I had been left out on purpose. But that is what happened. And when I went back internally and said, I was like, "What is this? Like, why didn't you tell me?" "Oh yeah, we're working on something, But I was completely firewalled from that. They were not going to let me in. That was, I remember, such a slap in the face, because I had worked so hard cultivating all these clients and making sure that we were really setting ourselves up in a leadership position, and that my organization was being viewed as this really, great organization to work with. And then I was left out. I was left out. Why is that? And I have a feeling it's because of the fear that I would have come in and surpassed, because it couldn't be fear that I wouldn't have done a good job, because I have a tremendous track record. I'm going to toot my own horn about that and say, I bust my ass. I have a wonderful track record. I have a reputation, and I would have nailed it, but they didn't let me in. And what's the only logical reason that they didn't let me in? Because it wouldn't have been because I'm underprepared and I don't know, because I knew how to do everything. It was really more a matter of, we don't want you involved in this because we want to be the ones who pulled this through. We want that. We don't want you to be coming into this. We want to do this. That's all it is. We want to hold you down here. Now, I have since left that position because I am not a fool, and not to say anyone else is a fool, but that's how I think of it in my head when I encounter situations like that, where I feel like I've reached the end of a line. I'm mindful of that, and I make the determination to leave and move on and move upwards, because to me, like staying in one position would have been almost like a death to the career. Like you can't do that. You're not going to grow in that way. I totally digressed there, but I wanted to give that example of like, it's literally today happens. Now, like that was a professional example, but like I'm sure there's like tons and tons of examples out there of like, in my opinion, it's fear. You're afraid that someone is going to come in, a woman, a minority, whatever, and swoop in and take something from you. Now, like this also says something about the people who are in leadership positions. If you have this fear that someone could swoop in and steal your thunder, well, you're probably not that great of a leader. Like, let me just put that notion out there too. And again, that's also like on a personal level and a professional level. Like if you think someone can take from you and that's how you're operating, then you're really not going to grow. You're not going to exceed your levels. But that's like this is how society has been set up. So it's like, let's keep the women in their place because they're fragile. They can't handle it. they can't, take the same stressors as men. But like, really think about that. Women have been put into this little box of like, they can't handle things, put them in the corner. They're mentally unprepared. They can't, understand this notion. And yet we are the only beings on this planet that can bring life into this world. We're the only beings who can do it. The female body is the only body that can hold and grow life. We're the only ones who can do that. We are basically the barrier between what's after this world and what this world is. Because where are our souls coming from? We are the courier. We are the one pathway into this world. It comes from the woman's body. And to then turn around and say, you're not strong enough to handle, being a professional? Are you kidding me right now? Like, it boggles the mind when you really think about it in that way. Like, we are the one being that can bring life into this world. Now, I know in labs they're doing things and whatnot, but I mean, we are the one natural being that can bring life. When think of that, and it's like total game changer, blow your mind notion. Like, and yet you don't want me to excel in my career. Like, are you insane? Of course I can handle this. Like, that amount of strength it takes to carry a child and then to bring that child into this world. I mean, I had 2 C-sections. My cousin also had a C-section, but that was traumatic and tough and everything. But like, even outside of that, like, well, I'm not outside of that, actually. Let me say that for a minute. Like, you have these C-sections and then you're handed your child and there's no aftercare. There's no recovery for you. There's no recovery notes. There's no physical therapy notes after you have a C-section. You were just told, here you go. Here's your baby. Go home. The one check that they do is to make sure you have a car seat. That's it. And then you're told to go. And the woman's body is left recovering, damage to the abdomen, unrepairable damage to the abdomen, because raise your hand if you had a C-section and you still never got your nerve feeling back in that area. You never will. I have a numb section of my stomach that will never get feeling back. It's been 7 years. I also had a numb section at the bottom of my foot that happened because of my epidural. For years, my foot was numb in the heel because of whatever the epidural touched. Like, there's science behind like childbirth and like there's medical processes in place for for the birth of a child. But there's still a lot of stuff that happens that's like, in the moment, the one goal is to make sure that child comes out happy and healthy, or not happy, they're crying, but the child comes out healthy and they're coming to the world healthy. And then it's the mother. And for the mother, it's very like slapped together. Like I was given, I mean, granted, like I've talked about this before, like, but my experience having my kids was not stellar, in my opinion. It just because of feeling like I was almost like a cattle being herded in. But that's a whole other I don't want to digress too far, but the strength that a woman needs to go through that, and then to also then come home and go right back into routine and right back into her life and be like, just thrown this like grenade basically that you don't know what you're doing and you need to just figure it out. Like it's wild. Like it's wild. And yet, but no, Jenny can't have a job. She's not mentally equipped. Like, are you freaking kidding me right now? Like, how could you really entertain that thought? Now that's C-section talk. Actual real childbirth where you're pushing a child out of your body. Oh my God. Like, I mean, I cannot say this enough. Commend my stepdaughter because she really, I mean, I don't even think she knows like how truly impressive it is that she did this huge thing. And like for all women who, give birth to children, it takes a tremendous amount of stress on your body, and you do it. We all do it. We want to do it. Like, we're excited for it. I was excited to have kids, and even to this day, like it's interesting because now even to this day, like I think back on it, I'm like, oh, too bad we didn't have more. No, thank God we didn't have any more, but like it still happens. And I know I went off tangent a little bit, but I wanted to just kind of connect the dot there because it's like, I can't believe that for all this time, women were treated as less because of a Darwinian idea that natural selection was happening faster in men. So it was elevating that species while women didn't endure as many dangers. Maybe women didn't endure as many dangers because women are actually more logical than men and are not, I'm going to say it, dumb enough to endure as many dangers. Like, can we think about that for a minute? Perhaps you should learn something from us because we have this common sense notion. I'm going to quote a favorite movie. If any of you have seen it, I'm sure everyone has seen it. My Big Fat Greek Wedding years ago. Like, this is an old movie apparently now because I'm an oldie. But in that movie, the mother, the matriarch, the mother of the house, says to her daughter, the man is the head of the house, but the woman is the neck, and the woman will turn the man's head into the direction she wants him to go. Now, I remember hearing that and being like, hell yeah, like that's, whatever. But now as a married woman, I do more fully understand that notion because, again, personal choice for myself, and I joke about it, but personal choice for myself, we do have a traditional setup at our house. My husband is incredibly proud of how smart I am. And he's told me that, that the thing that attracted him most in the beginning, not most, but the thing that really, I guess, attracted him after we got to know each other and what kept him intrigued with me was my conversation and my intellect and how I thought of things and being able to just talk with me. And through the 14 years is coming up, through the 14 years that we've known each other, he's continued to maintain that's something that was attractive to him. He's proud of how smart I am. And it's not to say that, we don't have like the traditional household setup here. And I'm always going to talk about that. We do. We have a traditional household setup. He is incredibly proud of how smart I am and is always, looking to me for that intellect and that thought. So there can be a mix there of, men who are intrigued and love, intelligent women, but then there's like a fine line. Now I know that there's a lot of men out there who, again, like are intimidated by that. And then that's the notion of like, we need to push these women into their place, basically. Full circle there is more like if you are experiencing this frustration at home where you feel like everything's falling to you in terms of childcare or housework or whatever, it probably is. You're not crazy. I think most of us, I know of maybe one person who is not in that scenario. But majority of women that I talk to do have that scenario, no matter if they discussed it or not in the beginning. But majority of women that I speak to, the complaint always is like, oh my God, my husband doesn't help or he doesn't help enough. And it's crazy because it's everywhere. Now, the other thing that I want to say here too is like a lot of people will let that frustration get to them to the point of, I don't want to do this anymore in terms of marriage, right? I'm not going to do this anymore. Like, you don't help me. I can just do this myself. And then it's like a divorce, right? I think that what really needs to be said here is that your husband is not a bad guy because he doesn't want to do the dishes. He's not a bad guy because he doesn't come home and jump right into helping you. The notion of helping and the notion that women should just be dealing with it is so far ingrained that even my 7-year-old has already picked up on, oh, women clean, and I'll tell them what to do. He already picked up on that. And again, it's the structure of our household. He observes me cleaning all the time, and he picks that up as, okay, this is, a woman's job. I obviously am trying to change that rhetoric for him, but like, it's there. There is such a, and now it's out of my son in society. Like, it's so permeated in there that it's almost like, what else would you expect from your husband? Take a step back and really think about that before you let your husband not doing dishes, or your husband not folding laundry, or your husband not helping with the kids, or whatever. Before you let any of that really piss you off to the point of like, I'm out of here kind of notion, take a minute and really think about that. There's a reason why all of that thinking is there. And I'm going to be unpopular opinion here, and don't get too mad, but you probably already picked up on that when you were dating. And here's the other thing too that I want to highlight is that, and I'm guilty of this too, is that women have this idea, I think, that, okay, well, maybe when we were dating, it was like this, but once we're married, it'll be different. And it's like, well, no, that's not really how it works. And then there's the notion of like, well, maybe, he didn't help out once we got married, but once we have kids, he'll see that I'm overwhelmed. He's going to jump in and help. I have unpopular opinion here. Not how it works. Men don't have that notion in their head. They just, I have not met one man that will naturally react and jump in and be like, oh my God, let me get in here and help you. Please message me if you know a man who does this, because I would really love to know who he's married to. And I want to talk to her because she probably has a lot of information to share with all of us, but I don't know any. Every male that I know, when he comes home from work, he's like, I just worked all day. I need to blow off steam. I need to go to the gym. I just worked all day. I need to take a shower. I need to relax. I just worked all day. I never say that. Does it, if somebody, I know one woman who I think might say that, and who I think probably does that, but I don't know anyone else who does it. Not one other person. I know not one person who does that. Just one. Like, I know one person who might do it, but I'm not sure. I don't know for sure. I mean, it's there. So the part of the reason why I'm saying all this is because, again, like, women are getting so frustrated because we're coming so far in being able to be business owners. I mean, guys, tune in for season 2. We have CEOs, we have authors. Like, I am so freaking excited to elevate these women's voices, because we need to see, like, everyone's doing all these amazing things. Like, we need to be supportive of each other. But still, on that note, there's still this baseline of like, but this is your job kind of thing. Again, unpopular opinion, because you all know that I lean into it, but like, I'm just saying, for anyone else who's going through that, and maybe you're listening to this right now and you're like, Jenny, no, like, if he comes in, he needs to jump right into this. That's cool. That's not how it works. Real strong recommend, because this is an oldie but a goodie in case anybody missed this. I'm turning 40. So if you're in your early 40s, late 30s, you're already probably going to be aware of this book, or this series of books. But game changer for me was, oh God, this is going to sound so cheesy, and don't judge, because I think this guy has been in the media for like not so great things, but I'm telling you, these books shifted how I handled my husband at the time. He was my boyfriend. You have to check out the Steve Harvey books. Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man. They made movies out of it, but the movies do not do the book justice. Like, the book is legit. Look at the book. There is literally like a language that you can speak to your husband that will make him like really see. And there's things that you have to do to make them really see, because naturally it's not going to come. It's just not going to come naturally. Stop barking up that tree. Like, just stop barking up that tree. It's either you're going to find a method to communicate with your partner that they will understand, and you start to change the actions by having those discussions. And I don't mean screaming. I mean discussion, talking. I don't mean you're screaming at them and trying to get them to do something that you'll never change. You'll never get that to happen. Speaking to them is going to be the best path, but it's going to take time. And you have to also be comfortable with that. I found my middle ground. It took 14 years. We're still working on it. But it's there. You can do it. But I want that message to come across, is that if you're married and you have kids, we're all going through the same thing. You're not alone. Your husband's not a bad guy. The only, in my opinion, if there's physical abuse or mental abuse, that's a reason to depart. But the rest of it, you picked this person, you wanted to get married to this person. There is something there that you wanted. Don't walk away from that just because, you're the one who's up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Godspeed, cousin. I hope that you're doing okay. But just because you're the one who's getting 2 hours of sleep, like don't go after him for that, but have the discussion with him. Try to take a beat and be like, look, I need a minute here. Again, like you've heard me say it, like years 1 through 4 of my children's lives, I was just on autopilot and just trying to get through it. Maybe not the best approach. And by that, I mean, it was not the best approach, but it's what I had to do to survive. Everyone has to find their own path and their own way to like deal with these things. It kind of is what it is. And until there's the massive overhaul in society of some these ideas that have been really deeply ingrained, we're not going to see huge waves of change. Like childcare may not in my lifetime ever be a paid benefit that is just there. May never happen. Maybe in my daughter's life. Maybe by the time my daughters are having kids, no, I'll still be alive. Maybe by the time my great-grandchildren are having children, maybe then it will change. Change is slow, especially in our society. So it's the same as in a marriage. Be patient. Just take a deep breath. We're all going through this. You're going to make it through this. Your children are going to grow up. It will get easier. I think somebody had told me, when you get to the 6-year mark, like you'll start to see things lighten up. And at the time I was like so deep into the 1-year-old mark that I was like, I'm going to die before that happens. I'm not going to make it. You will make it. It will get easier. It is going to happen. You are going to get through this early stage. And yes, majority of it is going to fall to you. You can handle this. You birthed that child. You can handle this. The child came from your body. You can handle this. So I'll leave you with that note. Thank you so much for listening to Still Roses podcast. We're greatly appreciative of all of you. I know Melissa is probably really mad because she missed recording this morning, but totally cool. She's doing her best, and that's all I really want. I want to hear from all of you. Anyone who has ideas about this, opinions about this, please reach out. I want to know. I want to hear from all of you. And then gear up, because season 2 is going to launch in January, and I'm going to continue to keep plugging it because I am super pumped about everything that's happening for season 2. So for now, take care and thank you for listening.